Hello and welcome to this edition of Own the Journey, where we have the opportunity to speak with incredible leaders from around the world. Today we have the privilege of speaking with David Cameron, the City Administrator for Republic. David, thanks for being with us.
Oh, it's great to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to hearing more about your story, because one of the cool things that you've done is if you have come into a community and you're running the city in the way that it operates much more like a business. Tell us about your story and how you decided to take on a different approach.
Yeah, well, thanks again for having me. I think that probably how my story began was I went to work in government 30 years ago, and I went as a technician. I worked as a wastewater operator for a city.
Okay.
And so my stepdad was a pipe fitter, so I was going to be more of a blue collar worker. I was enjoying it until I ran into the bureaucracy of it all, when you needed equipment at the plant and things to get done. And so my journey was, I kind of have been one of those people that worked in the system and the business, and I got frustrated with it. I thought, well, I'll just continue to learn and grow. And my stepdad had taught me, don't get beat over a piece of paper. So I just continued to learn and grow in the capacity of those jobs, and it just kept elevating me throughout government. I didn't go to school to be a public administrator.
Okay.
So I was there really to learn a technical degree and stay there, but I got frustrated with all the processes that got in the way of doing my job. And so it's really what's propelled me today and what drives me today.
Oh, that's outstanding. And I love that saying, don't let the paper get in the way.
Yeah.
I think we can all learn a lot from that. So what did you have to shift in the way that the government operates, or the way that the organization operates? That I'm sure there's cultural challenges, there's workflow challenges, just even mindset challenges.
Absolutely. So what you find, especially in government, you've got internal service providers, HR, IT, financial, legal, right? Those provide services to the employee for them to deliver their job. What I have found historically in government is those two don't always work well together, and they create bureaucracy. So you want to hire somebody, well, fill out 12 pieces of paper. You want to go buy pipe or material to build a street for a developer. Well, that's going to go through this massive approval process. And it's almost like we got to create rules internally that slowed the employee down. And then they go and create more rules to the development community or the community that slows it down. So having someone that could mediate between those two, one that could speak the language, like I said, coming from the wastewater side, I spoke the language to the people that vote and approve those things, but I also could go to those internal service providers, HR, IT, and legal, and say, this is why I need it. And I built bridges as an early leader to those, and processes that have just carried me through to this day. It's like, you do not have to make it this difficult, and I'll protect you if you do. So it's kind of like, I understand there have to be processes.
Sure.
But they don't. I'm going to create a safe environment for you if you take a little bit of risk. If you screw up, I will coach you through it, not criticize you. So thank you for trying, but I need you to try a little bit harder. Make the process easy.
I love that. What I heard you say really transparently is that the process is okay, but bureaucracy is not. Like, don't let the bureaucracy get in the way of well-developed processes that accelerate the outcomes that are necessary.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, because what bureaucracy is to me is control. I want to have control over it. So you create policies that are so that you have to give approval to it, right? Well, internal service providers, like those ones I mentioned, they can create them too, to say, I got to control it because I got to save my job. I can't have anything go wrong, so I get to have the final say. Well, giving the say back to the people, your employees, and letting them own some of the outcome if they mess up on behalf of HR. But at the same time, if you do that in the development world, your elected body's allowing you to have some culpability if you don't get it right as well. So making those processes much easier is it makes it a lot easier on the development side.
Yeah, I love it because you're creating safety in the organization. You're fostering trust, which is good for any organization.
Yeah, I mean, you have got to create a place that says, if you mess this up, I've got your back. But I expect you not to let fear get in the way. You make a decision, be urgent, bold, decisive. I got you. Operate in fear, and I'm going to probably kick you a little around and say, hey, listen, let's get going. You're afraid of something going wrong. Let me protect you if you do. But I cannot protect you if you're sitting there just trying to keep your job instead of doing it.
I love that. That is so valuable. So when is it backfired, or has it ever backfired? Where has there been a big mistake then is like, oh man, I'm staying up late tonight?
Yeah, well, there's been times where you give enough latitude where someone's going to not test it, but they're like, I didn't realize, I mean, you told us to think big and go big. I can remember right in the middle of a ballot measure. And ballot measures are not fun in government because people are like, hey, do more. And I agree, do more with my money. You're asking me for more of my money. Well, then one of my key employees said, David, there's 137 acres that's just now come on the market. It's prime real estate. We need this for a regional park. I was like, are you crazy? I'm in the middle of a ballot measure explaining why we need more of your money. How do I explain I got $3.5 million laying around that I could just go buy it? And I'm like, man, I've created a monster. They're out looking and being aggressive and assertive. And my own fear got in the way. I'm like, David, it's all about what you look like now. And I was like, listen, I've taught them, be aggressive, be bold, be assertive. If they say no, they say no. And within, 6 days, we bought that land.
Oh my gosh.
But we all got in a room. I said, help me find a way to package this, that we can achieve that objective. And so it was incredible because I watched them just not let fear get in the way, but it pushed me to, do you really believe in the crap that's coming out your mouth? Because you're telling us to go do it. And we found it, but you're worried about, but this could cost us over here. And I just like, let's go do it. I'm in. But what it told them was he celebrates and rewards big ideas too. Mm-hmm. And but that got me in some trouble where I'm laying awake going, what am I going to do with this? I mean, my mayor asked, it was like, are you crazy? I was like, we're just crazy enough to think we can do this and we can sell this and be good stewards to the community. And it turned out great, and it's going to be a great facility when it's done. But that land today, Tom, we bought it for $25,000 an acre, and that land is selling for $50,000.
Holy cow.
That's the difference between making the decision right then and what we're doing today. So yeah, that bold decision led to some forward thinking, but it cost me some sleep at night.
Well, yeah, but I think the thing that I think I loved about the way that you solved the problem is you brought your team together and you laid it out in a vulnerable place and said, hey, help me solve this, help me package this deal so that we can get it done. And it wasn't just you that had the bright idea, it was a team.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't have $3.5 million laying around. There was not just a cash position that I'm saying I want to, because as you remember, as you've told it, Republic was a rebuild, mm-hmm. cash positions and everything.
Right.
So asking the voters for a sales tax meant we were in a rebuild and we need a little bit of cash infusion from you too. And so where am I going to come up with $3.5 million? And how do we do this? So we sit in that room and everyone just kind of brought, I'll give this. And people gave out of their own, like, I'll sacrifice our small project to see this big one win. Mm. And that was very rewarding because that's, organizations, especially government, will operate in silos as independent organizations to protect themselves.
Sure.
In that situation, they said, I'll forgo those police cars. I'll forgo this. And I love watching a team come together to give up for the betterment of the organization, the bigger picture.
Yeah, it's outstanding.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, because I think we can all learn from that, because when we know we've got big problems, bringing the team together and individually making the sacrifices, we can all learn from how
absolutely
it can run better. You're in the public eye a lot, and sometimes I'm sure that's good, and sometimes I'm sure that's bad. How do you deal with the public criticisms of the decisions that you or people in the city are making? I know you have to be respectful and honor the voters that and the constituents that are paying the taxes, but it's hard.
It is, because the thing about it is what you have to appreciate. There's two types of good and bad when it comes to communication. Mm-hmm. You'll have those pieces where, like, hey, we really did a good thing, or we did a good job, and the feedback is good. You very rarely get that. But you want to frame it when you do, because it's like, hey, we really saw what you did. We see that you're going the extra mile for us to protect it. Then you get the bad. And I value the bad because there's something that can be learned from it. So what I like to say is, give me what that is, because that's how we actually turned Republic around. We went solicited feedback mm-hmm. from the development community, especially too. Why do you not, give me your feedback. And it was beyond critical. It could be pretty loud.
Yeah.
And I loved it because I knew every bullet in the gun. I'm like, now we know what to go and address, and some of it is not uncommon. You're going to hear about it.
Yeah.
Then there's the other side that is, look at this guy. You look at what you're doing. You're driving us into the ground. You're asking for more money. Look at how much money you make. There's going to be criticism that you get as a leader. That one, if I'm not doing my job. If I'm doing my job well, I'm going to be criticized.
Sure.
So there's a level of it that I got calluses on my hand and I got calluses in my mind, because it's like I have to be somewhat buffer to that to say, I can't just let every single comment on social media dictate my direction.
Sure.
And finding a capacity that this is what I lay my head on my pillow at night with, and I'll live with that outcome is what guides me. So it's like, it's like I heard a statement one time. It's if you live for the affection of others, you'll die by their rejection. And so people are out there looking for, hey, say I'm doing a good job. I don't necessarily need that, but it's almost like, because the moment that someone rejects me, I've watched a lot of great leaders melt down. They love the affection, but they cannot stand the rejection. And that's something you got to learn as a leader. The critical critique of you does not mean that you're a bad person, but it doesn't mean that person even knows you. So don't put a lot of stock in people that don't really know who you are, that just want to criticize you because of your job title.
Right. But at the same time, you're taking criticism in the right ways. Iron sharpens iron. So if there's an opportunity for improvement, you're leaning into it and you're like, yeah, we can do better for the developers, or we can do better for the city. We can provide better protection, whatever it is. When the feedback is there and it's meaningful, you've got to be able to filter through noise for the valuable feedback.
That is the art. You cannot say, listen, they're just being upset, they're being mad. Well, I've dealt with them for a long time. You got to say there might be some validity. I always say to my staff, there may not be fire, but there's enough smoke. So let's look at what we can address. That there's an aroma that does not work here,
right?
And we got to own that piece. Let their emotion kind of die down. And what I'll say in that, Tom, to those capacities, when you get into an emotional situation, listening to people and letting them just get it out on the table versus arguing your points is a critical piece too. Let them say things that might be offensive and almost personal.
Sure.
But let them be heard, and then you can take the critical nature of it and process it for what it really is. This is you're just having a rough day and you're taking it out on me, or there's actually some real meat here that we could address.
Yeah.
But we just took the critical comments we took and reversed that story. That's why it turned into such a good one. We took the critical and made them good.
So you literally wanted the criticisms of the city and the way that you operated, and you wanted those to become the points of pride.
Elevated. I want you to tell me where the sky's the limit. There's nowhere to go but up. Give me all those things, because what I want to do is turn them around and say, now look at what we do with it. It's the greatest marketing you can have.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Turnaround stories,
yes,
all of it. And I absolutely love it. Well, you were obviously critical in bringing Amazon to the region and everything that Republic did in order to make that happen. So when we think about a massive distribution center and the thousands of jobs that have been created, just talk to us about the bureaucracies, the processes, the things that you had to work through, and at the speed that you had to get it done. Because I don't think very many people appreciate how fast you had to move to say yes.
Absolutely. So I'll say this on the Amazon project, or any project for that matter. Like I tell my staff, there's a quote in the movie Facing the Giants, says, "Prepare your field for rain." Our job was to go out, plow our field, plant our seed, and get our processes and the way we run our business model in place. So permitting, how we communicate, one point of communication. So when the Amazons call, you're not talking to 12 different people. So we had prepared for that call. We didn't know it was going to be that call, but on June 2nd, I'm sitting in a meeting, I get a text message and says, hey, listen, June 2nd, it's coming. And I'm like, okay. Next day, I take a phone call. They wanted to have a permit by September 15th. In government, that's what some would consider impossible. And we had our work done for them in 6 days.
Holy cow.
But we had our processes that allowed us to get it done in 6 days, established 2 years in advance. So when you're changing a culture, what I taught and what I'm going to continue to teach is it's about fundamentals. Do the little things right. Prepare your house for whenever those things come to you. It's like where preparation meets opportunity. And that's all we did in Republic. We made it when they come, whenever a big business comes, like an Amazon, and calls and says, can you give me my permit? Can I be turning dirt by September 15th? I said, yes, you can. What else do I need to get approved? I said, it's just tell me you're coming and it's approved. I did not have to go through an elected body. I did not have to call a special meeting to get those done. Now, there was things that we had to do to facilitate that, because there's a size of 1 million square feet. You just don't have a book laying around like, hey,
here's how you do that.
Yeah, the biggest one I think we'd done was 250,000. So here's one for 1 million. And they delivered that permit in 6 days. And granted, they wanted to kind of showcase that we could do that. And but see, Convoy of Hope had just announced at the same time, and that one kind of got lost in the shuffle. I was like, we're not doing 2 large-scale developments at one time, and the permitting processes is where we did it. We prepared our field for rain, and it rained.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think there's some massive leadership lessons to be shared in that, just simply because you can't win in circumstances like that unless you practice to play the game. And
yes.
What you did was you prepared in the off season so that when the season hit, you were ready to win.
Yeah, that's exciting. Just to hear it that way, yeah. You go out and you prepare your processes inside the organization. But yeah, I've got 30 years experience in government doing it now. Mm-hmm. So you know what to look for, plus the developers that already told me the bullets in the gun, like, this is what's hard about it. This is what we just shored all that up and said, listen, but also I'd seen it before, done it before. So in a lot of ways it made it where it's like, I know this works. Mm-hmm. But I mean, no one's expecting to get a call on the 1 million square feet, but when you do, we're prepared for it. Yeah. And we're prepared for even bigger right now. Really? Absolutely.
Yeah, that's exciting. Well, yeah. I love what you're doing, and I think there's a lot of other communities that can learn from what you're sharing, because, I just know from my own experiences that dealing with planning and zoning and dealing with those processes, it kills deals really quickly.
Absolutely, because time is money, and money follows trust.
Yeah.
If I trust the process, I'm gonna invest my money there.
I love it.
Yeah,
that's so good. So on the note of your 30 years of experience in it, what advice would you give somebody who's new into city government or working within a bureaucratic environment that's a little bit challenging? How does somebody start to make a shift, make a change, understand, have the right attitude?
You got to be who you are. That's what first thing I'd say. It sounds very vague, but what I'd say is when I first got into local government and I'd gotten promoted, and what got me there was just authenticity, leadership, boldness, courage, and making decisions. Like, I don't need someone to tell me how to do it. Just allow me the latitude to do my job. But they trusted me because I was also authentic in that capacity. But whenever I became the CEO, it was, hey, you should wear a tie. Hey, you need to fire this person. Hey, and I started thinking, I got 8 bosses now. I'm in a public entity with 8 different employers. So it's like having one steak, you got to cook it 8 different ways. And I started listening to what they had to say. And I started trying to become what they wanted me to be. What I would say is you got to be who you were created to be, lead the way that you know how, and be your most authentic self, because you'll get tired and you'll get burned out real fast. And what I would tell you to cut through it, if you're going to cut through bureaucracy, don't worry about keeping your job, go do it. Because a lot of times you're trying to keep all those 8 people happy. Well, how do you want to help with this development? Do you want Amazon to come to town? You go out and poll 8 different people, you're going to get 8 different answers. Yeah. You're like, what is the pulse like? And I'll also tell you, find out what the pulse of the organization is when you go to that job. There's opportunities for you, but not every opportunity is for you. So you got to make sure that your skill set and culture matches what that organization needs, or otherwise you could be on 2 different trajectories. So that's what I tell young leaders: make sure your skill set matches the need of the community. Because when I interviewed with the Republic, I interviewed them. They interviewed me on day 1. I wrote 17 questions on day 2.
Wow. And
I was like, hey, listen, if this is what you're looking for, my skill set matches your need. But if you want to control it, bureaucracy, I'm not your guy, because it will not work. That's what I tell young leaders. Make sure that you're not just wanting the job so bad that you get into the wrong fit.
Yeah, I think that's outstanding. Knowing your skill sets and being able to apply those. But I think something that is special about the way that you lead, you spoke to it, it's your authentic self, but it's really leaning in to the truth, really understanding the facts of the situation. Don't letting your emotions get away from you. Embrace them, I'm sure, but yes, don't let them get away from you. But you're so sincere, and then you do what you say. You do your job, and that builds trust that brings money.
Absolutely. I think there's 2 things that get lost. I think you have got to be vulnerable with your authenticity. I think you got to tell people your struggles, but I also think to build, and that builds trust, but you got to do what you say. If my staff hear me say, fear will not dictate my direction, or when we talk about work-life balance and I say, listen, this is very critical to me, but I'm checking and responding to email while I'm gone, it says a completely different story. So they don't trust that they can do it when they're gone either. So I just try to emulate and do who I really am. I do not, like we were asking the question, I would not tell a young leader to be something you're not, because someday you're going to have to live with that. I think that's why a lot of people get down on themselves, is they're trying to act and be somebody that they're not, and they get trapped in it. And they miss David, they miss Tom, and they got to get out of it. And that's how you do it.
So how did you find, I think, in the struggles of trying to please 8 people and I'm sure ping-ponging in your own self and trying to develop who you are, how did you get centered? How did you say, this is who I am? This is
great question.
Operate.
That's a great question. So the story's too long, but I'll tell you what I did is I went back and I wrote a personal values document. And I was like, who am I? And I'm like, I'm about people. I'm about progress. I'm about going the extra mile. I'm about honesty. That's a big word for me. It's like, I'm not talking about honesty. If I throw a rock through your window, I'm going to go tell you. I'm talking about just being authentic and just telling you exactly the truth. I wasn't telling people the truth. I was telling them what they wanted to hear. Like, hey, this sounds good. This will keep you happy. And I was just dying inside. I want to say, listen, you're completely off the rails. You need to go this. I mean, the employees, everyone. And when I wrote that document to myself, it says that's who David Cameron is. But you know what David Cameron needs to do? He needs to give it to his team and says, team, what got me to this place, I've moved from. I'm no longer that David Cameron. I've become David Cameron, the politician. I've become David Cameron, the bureaucrat. I've become everything I despise. And I'm like, so I'm just going to go be DC. And people are going to see my warts and all. And I gave him that document. I said, this is who I'm going to be, and I need you to hold me accountable to it. And then in Republic, what I did is I took that same document, and that's what we wrote our values as an organization around. And now it's on a wall, so it's like it reminds me every day. It reminds them every day. I'm not going to deviate from these things. And man, they could get. And once I did that, it revolutionized what my team could do because they're like, that's who he is, and that's what he expects. But I get to live a very authentic self in that capacity.
No, I love that so much. What was the trigger? Was it just that?
No, the trigger was I was burned. I was 18 months as a CEO, 31 years old. I was at the top of the game, but I was miserable. I'm like, golly, I loved my job before, but I hate who I am. And so I was out on Stockton Lake with my stepdad, and he'd always told me, David, one day we're going to buy a boat, we're going to go fishing. I drove from Arkansas, pulled the boat down here. I was in the back and watching him trying to tie this lure, and I don't want to be disrespectful. I'm like, here's this guy that said, one day we're going to buy a boat. And there was just fundamental things of fishing that he didn't know because he'd worked so long, he never really made time to learn it. And I'm just like, wow, I don't want that to be my story. Someday I'm gonna do this. Someday I'm gonna go fish. I'm gonna buy a boat, and then I'm gonna be back at 75 years old and really not know how to fish. And I'm like, what are you doing? You're not enjoying. You're not even enjoying. You're doing this to cope. Fishing is just a coping tool for you. And you're like, go back and live in the job too. At least enjoy it. And that's what the trigger was. It says I've lost my way. And I don't want to continue to do it on these terms. And these are my terms now.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, bold, hard, I'm sure.
Oh, very.
It was challenging for you to navigate through that.
Because you've got to get territory back now. Because you've given it up, and they're used to calling you and texting you till 10 o'clock at night. And you have to start going blank on them. Hey, I texted you last night at 10 o'clock. Hey, yeah, listen, here's my new values document. We're not doing that no more.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that because you've got a rule.
Yes.
I mean, you've got kind of the bat phone, an emergency.
Yes.
There's folks that can get a hold of you. But aside from that, like when you turn off, you turn off.
Absolutely. So I have what I believe is what I say is every department head in my organization is a CEO of their business. I expect you to run your business and have your own checks and balances for how you respond to critical needs. So sounds crazy, but if my boss or the mayor calls me at 6:30 at night, I will not answer the phone. And he doesn't call me at 6:30 at night. But my thing is, if he has something that he has need of, he can say, I really need to talk to you. But if someone sends me a text, say, hey, you got a minute, I will not respond. Because it's like, that's too vague and it lives rent free in your head. I'm like, I wonder what that is.
Right.
Like, I wonder what they need. Well, I have processes that tell me, let that go. If they want to talk to you, they can tell you what it's about. But leaving it vague, I just think it's rude.
Yeah. I love it. And I think it shows your team that they have permission to check out, that they have the ability to focus on their life so that they can be their authentic self too. And at the end of the day, as leaders, our goal is to lift people up, help them to live their best life if we're doing our jobs right. And this extends that permission.
Absolutely, because this is what I would tell you. If I call one of my employees at 6 o'clock, they're going to answer their phone. And they're going to say, But just this is what they're going to do. It's like, hey, David, what's going on? And they're probably sitting there eating dinner with their spouse, and they're just saying, they're giving the one finger like,
it's my boss.
Yeah. And I'm like, I got to know and appreciate, like, there's nothing that's going to interfere, that should interfere with that person's life, that it can't wait till the very next day, or I can send an email that I can do it. If it does, there are places, because I do work in a world that's a 24-hour environment with people that carry weapons that have to protect and serve.
Right.
There are places that says, you will call me for this, and come under no circumstance, I will be there. They know when I will be there and when I won't. So
it's establishing the rules in advance. Again,
it is.
Yeah, I love it. I think, we can learn from that as an organization. I mean, we deal with the tech arena, and servers go down and issues happen, and we have to stop, drop, and roll. But our processes could mature with a little bit more of that, and I'm pretty horrible about checking out. So
yeah, I am not. Or I have a great process in place that my chief of staff, there's just times that she'll go into my calendar, and I'll say, are you out tomorrow, or is it why this has me out for the rest of the day? She just knows whenever I've reached my spot, and she'll calendar in times like, no, I've given you that 3-hour window, you're going to go home. And so I respect that, because they're watching me, they're watching what I'm doing, and I'm respecting what they're seeing. But they're encouraged and challenged to challenge me. It says, DC, we need you to go home.
Yeah.
And it's not because you're being mean. We just see that you're putting in a lot of time and a lot of hours. But they also know that I go to bat for them. They're like, let us go to bat for you. Let someone carry you for a while, because we watch how you carry us. Nothing more touching as a leader than watching your team care for you, because that means a lot to me.
Yeah, I can see that and appreciate it a great deal.
Yeah.
Who do you go to when you're struggling, you have a challenge? We all have coaches, mentors, go-to voices. Who's your go-to?
So, well, my go-to, believe it or not, is my chief of staff. But I've also learned a balance of that too. Going to an employee, not the best way to do it, but I also trust her immensely, personally and professionally. But I have counseling every week. I go to a counselor every Thursday, nonstop, and I have somewhere that I go that I process through, why am I spun out, or why am I feeling happy? Because what I'm constantly looking for is what gets me into that place where I would give up my authentic self. Because there's places of vulnerability. And I've learned that about myself is, do not get isolated. Find somebody that you can trust with that, and make them draw out what you don't want to say. Because there's things that I'm like, I don't want to go there.
Right.
I'm not afraid of that. Well, it seems like you're angry about it. But how I find my most authentic self and how I get to that is, I got to have someone that'll draw out. So why are we all worked up? We'll ruminate. We'll start worrying about it. I'm going to lose sleep tonight over it. So I was like, so what is that in your past? What is it that's triggered you to feel that way? And what's awesome about that is I come out of those sessions with not only like, man, I feel like going and getting a massage, or going to the gym and getting a workout in. You walk out there going, I feel much slower. The other thing I walk out there is with tools. And when I have tools that help me slow down, it's where because I gotta have something I can apply on the job whenever all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, because there's still things that'll grab me. And I'm like going, what do I do? I'm like, you just need to. So I have tools now that I can work on personally in my office that slow me down. Breathing, meditation, just for 10 or 15 minutes.
Doesn't take long.
Yeah, but that guy in his sessions, he can get me to be quiet for 15 minutes, and you can tell in this session, you can't get me quiet for 30 seconds.
Well, there's a couple of things to unpack there. First, I'm a big believer that everybody needs a coach.
Yeah, big time.
Counselor, help, all those things.
Yes.
And the second thing is, I want to applaud you for just being candid about it. I think there are so many people that find shame in the fact that they're seeing a counselor or a coach or whatever it is, and there shouldn't be. I mean, it makes our lives better every single time that you go through those experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you something else, because I get excited talking about it, because I used to hide in shame.
Right.
I used to hide in the fact that I had mental health challenges. I grew up in financial anxiety. I grew up in a single family. I had an abusive father, but all stuff that I'm like, I just said, I'm going to overcome it. I'm going to outdo it. But those were in my formative years. And like my counselor and people, your body doesn't forget. So those things have driven me to where I'm at. But there's also some pieces to it that jump up and grab me as an adult that have robbed from me. So And I used to think it was like something was wrong and like you can't have this and strong people don't have mental health challenges. I can't control what happened to me when I was 3 years old.
That's right.
Right? I can't control hearing my mother cry through the door how she's going to feed her kids, but it formed me. But I can't, at 3 years old, what are you going to do about it?
Right.
But it carries over into your adult life, and I would tell somebody, you got to get help, and you cannot do that alone. And if I've learned anything, I'm not ashamed of it. In fact, now I just stand up on it like a platform to say, do I have mental health challenges? Absolutely. Am I working actively on them? Absolutely. But I'm stronger today than I was 6 months ago, and I'll be stronger today 6 months from now. Mm-hmm. And it's really helped me live a full and happy life.
Yeah, no, that is so amazing. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for having the courage to share that. I think it's a big deal. And the other thing that I take from everything that you're sharing is that to live your authentic self, it's constant work. It's not like you write a document and then all of a sudden it's done.
Yeah.
Every day you're grinding it out and you're making it happen.
You got to be intentional about your mental health. Mm-hmm. It's not, I'll say this, because I will say this part of it too. There's no pill that they've given me to take for sleep, for depression, for anxiety. I'm on none of those things because there's no quick fix.
Right.
There is just hard work to say, I've got to go to places that I just don't want to talk about because I'm like, I shouldn't have this limp. But you do. Why should you just try to remove it from your life? It's part of your story. Make it a good part of your story. But you got to work with people, and it's daily. It's every single day. The one thing that I do on a routine basis is I write down, what is the story you're saying to yourself today? What are you saying to yourself? It's going to be a bad day. I'm already behind. I'm already here. You write that down and change the narrative. Say, this is who I am. I'm a strong leader. Got a big heart. This is where I'm going. I'm going to change things today for the good. I'm going to love others, but I'm going to love myself well today. That's how I have to turn that story around sometimes.
I love it. Yeah. Yep. Well, talk to us about your daily routine.
Yep.
I mean, is that, do you have quiet time in the moment that you do to prepare for the day? Or?
My morning routine is this. This is something that's changed a lot. It's not just the morning routine. I didn't used to value this was my sleep. So making sure that I'm getting a good night's sleep, which means you're not drinking until you fall asleep. So you cut out caffeine at certain times of the day, drink water to certain points, get a good night's sleep. Then the other part of that is exercise. When I started incorporating an exercise routine, I don't do it every day. And the reason why is because my body needs rest. So because of sleep, I'm at the gym routinely around 4 a.m. to 4:30. I'll work out for 1 hour and it's a pretty intense workout, but I found things that I like to do. That's like, I don't like to be on a treadmill and just stare at a wall.
Right.
And it's boring to me. So lifting weights that I can do and keep moving and active was huge. What I eat, what I drink, but then there's that moment of devotion. Just spend time in God's word for me. Mm-hmm. And I just spend time just saying, oh, Lord, there's just certain parts I'm scared of today, and I don't know how to deal with this. So I have a place of source where I can go, and that's how it's imperative that I get that done.
Yeah, I love it. Well, David, as we wrap up, we always like to ask people their best advice that you've ever received or the advice that you'd like to share.
Yeah, so if I can share a couple, because my stepdad raised me. He said, don't get beat over a piece of paper. He told me the value of advancing your competency, your skills. It's like, and that meant the world to me. Because I went out and grew and I watched it grow from piece of paper to piece of paper. But the best advice was ever given to me was from the late former chief operating officer from Walmart. His name's Don Soderquist. And he has the Soderquist Center for Leadership and Ethics in Northwest Arkansas. And he said, David, he goes, you've got to balance processes and relationships. So you can be very driven on the process side, the bottom line. And that's the way I was as an early leader. I'm like, you just crack them into shape.
Yeah.
Get results.
Grind it out.
Use heavy-handed techniques. And he goes, you got to balance that with relationships. So you got to love people. You got to care about other people. Because I do. But you get scared because you need the result. You got shareholders and stakeholders at stake that want to know what's going on.
Right.
And that piece of advice has carried me greatly because you can be so nice to people that you don't deal with it either.
Yes.
So you can be relationship driven. Hey, here's your annual bonus. Here's your annual check. Here's your raise. thanks for being here, but you know there's glaring deficiencies that you won't address, but you're like, I don't want to be so process driven that I run them off because there's a workforce shortage. We need people.
Right.
So you compromise your values as an organization just to keep them. So balancing processes and relationships is to sustain results. Best, most caring piece of advice, so much that it's in our mission statement today. We're about processes, relationships, and trust. I've never left it.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being so honest and vulnerable with us today.
Yeah.
And I think that your advice is just absolutely incredible. I want to raise a glass to you.
No, to you too.
And say cheers to you for
Cheers.
the journey.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.